We say people power. We say people power, our power. To remind ourselves that real power belongs to the people. My name is Samuel Kisitu. I am a Ugandan citizen and I fled to Canada in 2019. The weekend of Labor Day reminds me here. I come from Luwero in central Uganda. It's one of the Uganda kingdom. And I am a Muganda. I am a father. I am a husband. That gives me a smile. I was born in 1989, 3 years after the Luwero Triangle Bush War, which brought President Museveni took to the bush. He gathered 27 guns and 27 men and started the war. When he started recruiting more support, he considered the civilians in the Luwero Triangle. Among the civilians he gathered, my father, my grandfather, and my father supported him with different food crops from his farms and gardens. He was also having skills, mechanical skills. He participated in repairing artillery. The artillery that was abandoned by Oboto's army. His participation in the war impacted our family. One of his sons, the late Lubwama Livingstone, my uncle, a brother to my father, was murdered because he was shielding Museveni and his group. Lubwama Livingstone's murder should be remembered in history as one of those approximately to 500,000 or more lives that lost their lives during that war that brought President Museveni to power. I got a dream that one day I'll be a member of parliament. And in 2015, losing this election in 2015, I lost the election, I lost the money because we have monetized politics, the challenges in Uganda, monetized politics. Losing the election, losing the money. In 2015, I had my second born. Now we have a baby in the house. I am jobless. Things were not working for me. It was showing a typical Ugandan living below poverty lines. As a younger youth, I was one of the 85% jobless youth in Uganda. In the election, I want to narrate that I wanted so much to build on the legacy of my father. We have a history in the family that the opposing the government in power led to the murder of one of our own, my late uncle Livingstone Ruwama. This trauma is recycling. My parents, how they were betrayed and disappointed, how they died in misery. Now, for our family's history was challenging. The most important assignment was to break these cycles of trauma and poverty. Challenge it that maybe we would get something from government. But I took a bold step in 2017 when Bobby Wine, who was a very famous artist at that time, singing and highlighting the challenges in government. You know how the government was rotten. This Bobby Wine opened our eyes slowly but sure, slowly but steady. If we don't stand up as the youth, we are going to lose our generation. We're going to lose what had taken our parents to the battlefields to fight so that to fight for our future. So I want to mention to you that my activism now started when there was a national election of the local council chairman and chairpersons, the village levels. The village committees have village chairman, chairpersons who elect their committee members. So I stood to be part of the to be the chairman. I contested to be the chairman of Takajunge village, but now in different colors. Which colors? The Democratic Party. That time, the Democratic Party, DP, and FDC were leading the opposition of Uganda politics. So I changed the colors and I now turn to the truth and justice, the slogan of DP, Democratic Party, to now join other Ugandans, oppressed Ugandans, to demand what is our own, to demand what deserves us as a generation. Unfortunately, I lost the election. Unfortunately, that is the election that shaped me on the side of the opposition, that made me embraced by the people of the opposition, not knowing that I would be a target of government this time. On one day, when I was coming from Kampala, I went back to the village. It was an evening. I found these two men. They came from the back of my, they, they came behind me, and they intended to, okay, before I could realize their faces, they took control of me and started beating me. That is when I lost consciousness. The next morning, I was picked from a coffee plantation. That situation showed me the magnitude, or showed me the risk of my life, still reminding me of little Wama Livingstone, how he was murdered. That is the time I said to myself, I made the decision that it's time to move. In 2018, I tried to apply for the visa to go to the US. I did not succeed. After medication, I tried to apply for a visa to Canada, in Nova Scotia. I did not succeed. So I lost two visa applications. On the question of Canada, why Canada? Remember, history. I am a student of African nationalism. I'm a student of history. Studying about African nationalism, liberation struggles, personalities like Idi Amin, I remember the expulsion of the Indians. Where did they run to? Majority of them came to Canada. To me, Canada was a country where human rights and dignity are respected. So I had to stick to Canada and apply again. That's when I got a visa and came here in 2019 September. When I came here in 2019, I happened to know the Ugandan community. Here, many communities converge under a church, or churches, faith institutions do a lot. At Dominion Church International Toronto, We gather as Ugandan community. So when I talk about my activism work, I can to the places who welcomed me, who embraced me, and were part of my healing. Because after going through all that, I had to undergo a journey of transitioning through healing and starting again. Starting again, finding a home away from home. Starting again, finding a family away from family. So I joined the groups because from the shelter, I found a place to rent around the areas of Jane and Finch in northwest Toronto. Those ones, in that place, I connected with the groups. Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty welcomed me. People Power Movement, Canada chapter. I connected with those who came before me and were spreading the voice, spreading the word, voicing the concerns of our people back home. In fact, it should be on record that the Free Bobby Wine campaign started here in Canada. When Bobby Wine was imprisoned, the Canada chapter started the campaign that spread all over the world. So I got to be oriented on how work is done by the leadership, by the community, by fellow members here. As a member of the People Power Movement and the National Unity Platform Canada chapter, I realized the gaps between us, the local people, specifically the African population in Canada, and the mainstream media. Our issues are not so much published in the mainstream media here. So I started looking for this mainstream media, the Toronto Star, the CBC, the CTV, trying to tell them our stories. Because I also started with a slogan, my community, my concern, trying to do more civic engagement. It's either me or no one. If I don't show up, no one will show up. Not so that was a major motivator, energizer that would push me into different demonstrations that we're having, protests, advocacy meetings, personal engagement with reporters in media-centric advocacy. I got a chance to have my stories published in the Toronto Star, the CBC News. So that's what I have been doing, to use the media to our people back home. I've been very involved in issues concerning immigration, housing, and work, because those are the key factors that help somebody settle here. Without work, you can't make it. For newcomers, without work, we can't make it. This is where they found a new home. Homelessness. Homelessness among African refugees has not just started last year when we had so many Africans at the streets of Toronto. I want to tell you that while the media published the African refugee housing crisis, there was a crisis before the cameras went to have their boots on the ground. I am homeless. I lost my apartment 2 months after renting it in the church. At Dominion Church International, Pastor Eddie Jumba made a bold decision to allow me in the church. And I slept there. By the time COVID knocked the doors of Canada, I was in the church. Around March, when Premier Dogford announced the stay-at-home order, my home was church. I experienced firsthand what it means to be homeless. 5 months in the church before I got a job as a PSW. Luckily, I got a room to rent. They was asking about my advocacy work. I remember during COVID, we had the overcrowding on buses, spreading. Healthcare workers use these public means and go back home, contracting the virus to other people. In the middle of overcrowding of buses, it's easy to understand how the virus was fast spread. So I was part of those people who raised concern through CBC News about the overcrowding of bus 35 at the Jenny Street. That is one of my first story in the CBC News. The second story was about the realities on the frontline work during COVID-19. How temporary agency workers were treated because of being undocumented, signing no contracts, and the other rights that are stripped of a person who is non-documented, who doesn't have status in Canada. It happened to me to ask them that, why were my shifts cancelled? He replies, your shifts were cancelled because we don't have much reasons to give you, but when we need workers, we call for workers. When we don't, they have to go. The companies to work with, he states, when temporary agents ask a lot of questions, they are not in business. I felt so bitter in a place where I am hoping to rebuild a life. If I find such injustices, where is the hope? But it was good that I had already connected with Jen and Finch Action Against Poverty. When they cancelled my shifts from a place called Stratford in Ontario, I had to come back in Toronto. But I was now worried of losing my rental unit. And I had these questions, so many questions, but no answers. When I shared with one of the organizers at JFAP, I got a chance to share this story, a chance to publish this story in the Toronto Star. There are so many people facing injustices without the microphone. So many people facing injustices, and their stories will never be recorded. Just like the stories of the people of Luero Triangle. Just like the very many other stories from different people, regardless of their colors. But still, there are so many other suffering people who don't have access, who don't find equity, who find their human rights. I fled this story to be published. I consented to. For example, while working at Stratford, there is this resident that I responded to, and this resident was in deep pain. But when I came to respond to her as a PSW, she welcomed me, but still, she was nervous of me being new to the place. Now, relating to her, I heard these hymns from her radio. Now I studied that, oh, she's a Christian. And I related with her, and I mentioned that, yeah, my name is Samuel Kisitu. So she said to me that I told her where I'm coming from, of course, Uganda, Africa. Now we related, and I tried to clean her, tried to feed her, and stuff like that. But when I left and my shifts were cancelled, when I shared the story in the Toronto Star, that story spread all over the country, and without my plans or knowledge, I didn't know that it would reach her children. This resident died a few days later after our meeting, or after me meeting her. Then when I shared the story, uh, her children felt like this is like a miracle to see that the person who was there for their mother when they couldn't reach there, when they couldn't do anything for her service, for her health care, to hear that I shared a story, they were touched. Her mother, this resident, informed her children that, Erica, there was an angel in my room, a man from Africa. He comes from Uganda. His name is Samuel. So Erica now records the notes, and the Dominion Church, she wrote to Toronto Star to get in touch with me. When I got this message, I invited Erica to meet me at church with other PSWs doing the same work, who go unseen and unappreciated and unrecognized. But most importantly, my heart falls for those people I have left back home, all those people that are still oppressed in different parts of the world. That's why I put on this red beret. It represents the blood shed by so many people who are murdered, the blood that is shed by so many people who are murdered in extrajudicial killings, the political prisoners who are still in the prisons, those who are abducted and they have disappeared because of activism, those ones who are facing a lot of oppression and gun violence in their homes, and attempted assassinations and assassinations, those ones who are wounded, that they should be seen and their voices should echo in our hearts, and we do something for their families and for the generations left behind, so that we see a better world. I want to make a call to action to all democracy, to all organizations, governments, and the communities, or persons or individuals who feel that in their homes they have democracy. I am sending a message that Uganda should have the same democracy as they are having.